In this video, we're going to talk about 10 brutal punishment in the world. So before starting this video, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for the future updates. 10. Necklacing. The horrifying practice of necklacing entails squeezing a rubber tire soaked in gasoline around the victim's chest and arms before lighting it on fire. Necklacing was a frequent punishment used by enraged crowds to punish accused thieves and rapists in South Africa, Nigeria, and India in the 1970s and 1980s. The victim may take up to 20 minutes to die, suffering severe burns in the process. Number 9. The bone snapping. One of the most popular interrogation platforms in medieval Europe was the rack, a bone-snapping, ligament-tearing torture tool. The victim's ankles are chained to one roller, and their wrists are attached to the other, which is essentially a table with two rollers on either side. The tension on the chains is gradually increased by a handle and ratchet mechanism linked to one of the rollers, resulting in painful pain. The affected joints progressively detach and dislocate over time. Hearing the loud popping sounds caused by snapping cartilage, ligaments, or bones is one horrible feature of this torture, as are the strained muscles whose ability to contract renders them worthless. Number 8. Rat in a bucket. Torturers take use of the fact that rats will do anything to escape unpleasant circumstances in their heinous experiments. A prisoner's naked corpse is placed on top of a pottery bowl filled with rats, which has been heated up and rendered intolerable for the rats by the addition of red-hot charcoals. In an effort to cool off, the rat's sole option is to enter the victim's intestines. Once, according to records, this form of torture was used on a prisoner of war during the Dutch Revolt in the 16th century, after the rats had eaten through his flesh and scratched his intestines. Then they stuck hot coals into his stomach, scalding his body organs. Number 7. The head crusher. The executioner slowly turns the handle of the head crusher, which clamps down on the victim's head and causes it to be crushed between a metal plate and a circular iron cap. The victim's skull is gradually crushed, and bone fragments from the skull can pierce the brain, causing muscular spasms to occur on their own, and, of course, brain bleeding. If the person inflicting the pain desires, he or she may use an iron rod to strike the middle gap, which would cause echoing pain to reverberate throughout the victim's body. Most of the time, the victim is killed only after their jaw has been broken and their eyeballs have been forced out of their sockets. Number 6. Tucker telephone. In the 1960s and 1970s, the Tucker telephone was an electroshock device employed in the Tucker State Prison in Arkansas. This torture tool was used by prison medical staff on rebellious inmates. The method for operating the gadget involved wrapping a ground wire around a prisoner's big toe and clamping a hot wire to their genitalia. The wires were next connected to a foam that had been modified to deliver electric shocks. As the foam was turned on, piercing electrical currents were sent throughout the prisoner's body. In prison slang, a long-distance call was equivalent to receiving several electric shocks in quick succession. Any prisoner who fainted during the ordeal would be shocked once more and doused with cold water, making the pain more worse. Number 5. German chair. Comparable to the rack, the Syrian regime frequently subjected the rebels to the German chair as a form of torture. When a prisoner is apprehended, their legs and arms are fastened to the seats of a metal chair, and the back of the chair is dragged back and downward towards the floor. The spine, neck, and other limbs are subjected to extreme stress, which frequently results in lifelong injury. One prisoner who was able to escape the Syrian torture cell reported that for 4 days, he was hanged upside down in the chair for 8 to 12 hours a day after being stripped naked. He claims that the torture left him with uncontrollable twitching and that the pain was so unbearable that he asked his captors to murder him. Number 4. Flaying. Flaying, also known as skinning, is a cruel practice that dates back to 883 BC and involves using a variety of techniques to completely strip the victim's skin. The most popular method of flaying is to put a knife's razor-sharp blade just below the chin. Work your way down to the toes, starting with the face. In some instances, the removal of the skin would be done slowly and in modest increments. A still alive individual with exposed muscles, ligaments, and bones is what's left, yet the skin of their face is still intact. The last step was to boil the skin off captives by placing them in enormous cauldrons, with only their heads showing out while hot, blistering water or oil was poured inside. Number 3. Impalement. One of the most horrifying ways to pass away was and still is through being impaled. The person is immobilized because their arms and legs are restrained to the ground by pegs. They make sure the stake isn't too pointed because the victim would die too quickly from being shot. A huge, oiled wooden stake is gradually driven into the body, typically into the anus. Frequently, victims were pierced in the chest or abdomen, as well as other bodily orifices. Sometimes infants were forced through their mothers' chests and impaled on the stake. The victim may take up to 3 days to suffocate if the pole was lifted right after the attack, and the person was let to slide down the pole on their own. Although this form of torture has been practiced since 1772 BCE, Vlad the Impaler, a Romanian who lived in the 15th century, is credited with popularizing it. Vlad's name and reputation served as the inspiration for Dracula in Bram Stoker's 1897 novel. Impalement was also used as recently as 1919 during the Armenian Genocide. Number 2. The brazen bull. The brazen bull was a torture tool used by the ancient Greeks that also served as a psychotic musical instrument. Within a huge hollow brass bull statue were naked victims. Most often, the prisoner's tongue is severed with razor-sharp metal scissors before being forced into the empty bovine statue. Torturers would then ignite fires beneath the bowl and slowly raise the temperature on the victim within, muffled by the thick metal casting that served as a sound barrier. The only opening was through the mouth of the bowl, which let smoke from the cook inside escape. At the front of the bowl were a number of brass tubes, which reverberated the sound of the tongueless victim's muffled moans. The prisoner could endure the heat under the statue for anything between 10 minutes and many hours. Number 1. The Judas cradle. A prisoner would be forced to sit on the Judas cradle, which was a pyramid-shaped seat. The victim would then be hoisted over the top of the structure using ropes and a harness. The top of the pyramid would be set up to enter the anus or the vagina as the individual was being brought down, causing excruciating pain. The feet would be tied together, such that if one leg moved, it would cause more pain in the other. The individual is subjected to excruciating pressure, stretching of the orifice, and eventual tears and muscle tissue death. By elevating the victim off of the seat overnight and resuming the torture the next morning, the torturers would extend the interrogations. If the victim didn't pass away through impalement, fatigue, or shock, I hope you enjoyed the video. I think you guys would really enjoy it.